Hello and Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. If my feet could talk, um, we're in episode 2 of season 3, and guess what? We're back into another lockdown. So I started all this during the first lockdown, and here we are, 3 lockdowns later, and I'm still going. Thank you for everyone for your support. It's been a fantastic, and I'm glad people are enjoying this podcast and people are recommending it for people to listen to. Um, it's crazy. But what does it mean for me this lockdown? Nothing has changed in regards to work or family life. We're still exactly the same as we were in the first lockdown. We're still both working. We're still doing stuff. Obviously, my boy's not in school, and now because they closed the school again, but we're still homeschooling him at the same time. Both of us working, so that's quite mad. But for running, it means I've lost another race. So I've lost the Arc of Attrition. It got cancelled just before Christmas. Um, Before they announced the lockdown, mainly because pretty much everyone's tiers had been moving up and everything else. And that was the race I've been focusing most on during last year through all my training. Um, so I was a little bit gutted about it. So I was already in a week of easy runs, recovery from all the training I'll be doing uh, before I went again for the last few weeks. Um, so I decided, fuck it, I'll take another week of easy runs, and it allowed me to focus and reset myself over the Christmas period and into the new year, which was quite nice. And now I'm back training, ready for focusing towards my next race, currently in May. Fingers crossed, the Southwest Traverse. Um, so that's the next race currently in May. Um, I'm still run streaking. I'm on day, as I record this, I'm on day 601. So yesterday I recorded, um, I celebrated 600 days. So a mini milestone in my run streak. I'm obviously 400 days from the 1,000 milestone. My 2 year mark is in May. So next one really to celebrate properly will be 2 years in May. So that's going to be cool. But anyway, that's enough from me. You're probably bored of that side of things. You want to get onto the guests. So let's move on to my next guest. Now, this woman is phenomenal. And I'm so pleased she said yes to coming on my show. And I've known her for a few years now via social media. And we spoke to her colleague of Brutal Events, James Page, in the first in the second season, and it's this woman that sort of inspired him really through her events to do what he did. Um, she she's the creator of Brutal Events, and if you think James's Decca Ironman achievements was bonkers, wait until you listen to this. I give you the one and only Claire Smith. Okay, and we are recording. Hello and welcome, Claire, to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, not bad at all. Thank you.
How have you been over the last year with all the lockdowns and flippy flopping around
Yeah.
with that?
I mean, I personally don't mind the whole isolation thing. I've got to be honest. It doesn't bother me too much. I know a lot of people have struggled with their mental health with it. It's not a thing that, you know, I do a lot of long stuff on my own anyway. So, and I'm very self-motivated. I've been self-employed for a very long time. So again, it's not, it's something I've struggled with too much. So yeah.
And the family, how have they coped? Because you got children of your own, obviously.
Well, they're kind of adults now, actually.
Yeah.
So initially, when we were quite, we were locked down. It was Jake was 18; he was at home still, and Jess, she was 23 then, and she was working from home. And we just got on really well. It was actually quite a nice time. I feel a bit bad for saying it, but it was a nice few months. Yeah. So Jake's now left home, and Jess is still working very much from home. So yeah, it's not been a bad time, to be honest.
Excellent. That's the main thing. So for everyone who doesn't know you, Claire, and I'm surprised if they don't, to be honest, where have they been?
Yeah.
That's what you have to wonder. But we do. I do get people that are new to our world that may not have come across you listening to this or watching this, as it'd be on YouTube as well. So can you explain who you are and what you do?
So I'm mostly known for Brutal Events. I set up Brutal Events about, God, like 10 years ago now, which is crazy. And that I wanted to start a sort of, I did a double Ironman, and I wanted to start a company that offered a tougher double Ironman. So I started it in Snowdon, and the event company sort of grew from there. And I started adding more and more events around the UK, different types of events as well. So I'm kind of known for that. The guy who is a friend of mine now, who won the first double Ironman, Matthew Dales, he called me Brutal Claire. For some reason, it sort of stuck, and people just started calling me Brutal Claire from that point onwards. So yeah.
Well, there is truth in that name, I think. Since I've gotten to know you through social media over the years. But where did you grow up? Where are you from? Where has Brutal Claire come from?
So I was born in Bournemouth. For a while when I was young, I lived in Hereford, and I loved Hereford. And then my parents split up, and I got dragged back to Bournemouth. I love Bournemouth too, but admittedly, I like being closer to Wales. So Bournemouth basically is where I've spent most of my life, and I love being near the sea and the forest and stuff. So it's good.
And were you a sporty child growing up?
Oh my God, no. I hated sports, literally. I used to lie to my PE teacher to say that my asthma was really bad, so that I couldn't take part in sports. I used to use that as an excuse all the time. So no, it took me a long time to even get into the...
I think if we listen back to every female guest I've had on here, I think pretty much most of them, I'd like to say 100%, but it might be maybe 95% of them weren't sporty as a child.
Really? How fascinating.
And obviously when they become adults in their later life, they've then ventured into the world of ultra running and extreme events and stuff like that. So, it's a theme running along here, I think, isn't it? Within the female side of things, which is great in my personal opinion. So you weren't a sporty child, but was there any influences from your family members, that you look back on now and go, actually, maybe I do follow my dad or my mum? Or
so the only thing I can get from my childhood, I rode for a while, Christchurch Rowing Club, which I really enjoyed. That was about the age of 13, and I think that was because my stepmom used to row. There's a thing in Hereford where they do like raft racing.
Yeah,
it's an endurance sport. It's like there's 60 miles and 100 miles, and the rafts are made out of like like the chip fat kind of barrels. Yeah, it sounds a bit dodgy, but actually it was a massive thing at the time. I'm not sure if it's still going, but she was a part of that, and she used to race the men's race because you're allowed one woman on each team. And I remember just being in awe of her and thinking, wow. And I think looking back, she was probably the main influence. I kind of wanted to impress her and stuff. I think that's
so. So if someone in your family is doing something, I suppose, maybe a bit extreme to the norm, it may have rubbed off on you, because that as people will find out, that's obviously in your personality. Moving on. So you could probably put it down to something like that, and subconsciously.
I watched them over sort of 3 days, just pushing themselves, rowing continually. And And I just remember being just like, wow, it certainly lit a fire in me, I think.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the Cambridge and Oxford boat race down the
Definitely not.
down the Thames. I mean, those guys are something else anyway. But
absolutely,
this is
the other, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely other end of the spectrum,
yeah,
isn't it?
sure.
So when did you start then finding, the love for running, as an example?
So I just had my first child. I was a single mum. I was about 20. I was in a bit of a grim situation, flat, not struggling to make ends meet and things like that. And I remember just my family friend was running, so I was kind of aware of the London Marathon and things like that. And him and his wife were quite good runners, but I remember just sort of thinking, well, maybe I could try. And I used to go out with my daughter Jess in the pushchair early so nobody would see me, and literally just run. And it wasn't like a baby jog or anything like that, it was just a pushchair. And she was a really good baby, and just would sleep. And I would just be like, running around, like when only the postman was sort of wandering about. So that's where I started. And I went on from there and did a half marathon, the New Forest half marathon.
Yeah.
But then I dropped it for quite a few years and just didn't do anything. I was fairly unhealthy, lots of bad habits and bad stuff going on. So it wasn't until later, until I was about 30 something, early 30s, that I then started doing marathons and things like that.
See, again, that appears to be a common theme across pretty much everyone I speak to. We all sort of started in our 30s and 40s hitting the marathons and then the ultras and everything else.
Yeah.
Maybe we could put it down to midlife crisis, or that's when we realize we need to change our lives.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's quite a common theme in our world, of our generation sort of starting at that point, really.
I think, yeah.
And you mentioned you sort of touched on that you were in sort of bad places, and I was reading your website, and it mentions you struggled with addiction and depression and self-esteem. What was your addiction? What was that like for you, and how did you recover and cope? What was your mechanisms?
So I used to have a real problem with alcohol, and I had from a very early age, early teens and stuff. And it was just, there was some stuff that happened in my teenage years that I found difficult to deal with. And I think I found alcohol was just an escape. My self-esteem got very low around that point as well. And I just found that when I drank, I used to kind of feel like I liked myself. And, 13's a bit of a dodgy age, you're very sort of open to things and susceptible to ideas. And I think it just became, alcohol became my crutch, if you like. And it stayed with me for a long time. And I knew I had a problem when I was about 18. I was very aware of it. And I was probably from the age of 18, 19, I was trying and failing continually to give up, knowing that it was the very worst thing I could do for myself. But I just kept doing it, and I really struggled. And even though there were periods where I didn't drink, obviously throughout my pregnancies and things like that, I still struggled. And I'd always end up back in the same situation, which was very frustrating.
So, how did you manage to recover from it? Have you recovered? I'm assuming that you've recovered. You might still be struggling, but
I mean, I'm about 7 years, 7 years sober, clean, no problems at all. It did, there's the old cliche of rock bottom. I did hit it pretty badly. It got very bad and very serious for a while. I hid it extremely well. I am the ultimate kind of high functioning adult. I was running the business. I was doing double Ironman. I was bringing up 2 kids of my own. But it got to a point where I could no longer hide it. The cracks were starting to show, and I was, I did get to the point where I had a moment where I was like, I'm going to die.
Or so end up. How old are you by this point when you had this?
When I'm 46, so probably 38.
So it was quite a long time then.
Yeah.
If you started in your teens.
I was incredibly determined to keep the habit going.
Well, in some ways, I don't blame you, especially with the way worlds are turning. But it must have been so difficult, especially when you got your children growing up now as well. At that point, that must have been quite
a sports business and being known for doing it was like living a double life. And it was very sad, and it was it was really hard. I didn't like the person that I was.
So which person was really brutal Claire and which person was just Claire?
That's a weird question.
Well, because you were hiding your persona. You were doing all these.
I think I mean, the real person is brutal Claire, because I'm here now, and I'm still as brutal as I was before. I don't think, I'm just happier with myself now. I've learnt coping mechanisms that I just didn't have. And I was saying to someone yesterday actually how when I first gave up I had to feel everything, and I remember just being horrified that I was going have business problems or other relationship problems, and I remember thinking, oh my god, I have to feel all this. What? It seemed to be like it was just easier to numb it with wine or whatever I was drinking to, but I had to learn how to sort of feel things and cope with things without reaching for anything else, and that took me about 2 years to get to that point.
And obviously, going back to when you started, there wasn't the support then that there is now for those like yourself dealing with addictions and mental health issues. I mean, we've come a long way, haven't we, really?
Yeah, I mean, it was very stigmatized. It took me a long time to talk about it. I mean, still talking like this now, I still feel a bit like, oh, what will people think of me? But I'm now like of an age where I'm like, whatever. This is me. I went through these times. Yes, there are certain things that happened in my life that I am not proud of, but I was struggling, and I was just doing the very best I could.
Yeah, and I appreciate you talking about it. I mean, I've talked about some of the stuff that I went through in my life, and other guests have also talked about their stuff that drives them and what made them now. And I think the more people like you and me, we talk about it on things like this, then someone may be listening. It may help them to seek help.
I think even though I'm uncomfortable speaking about it, I think I would have, there was a certain fitness person I used to follow years back. I mean, this is a long, long time ago. And I remember...
Mr. Motivator.
No, it was someone called Susan Powter. She had like a buzz cut. She was like American, and this is years back. You have to Google her. She was pretty cool. But she came out years and years later as a functioning alcoholic. And I remember being stunned by that and kind of going, shit, that's me. She was known. She had books out and everything. She was like way back. And it sort of stunned me. But then I remember thinking, she's doing what I'm doing. She is me, and if she can get sober, then so can I. So it definitely, I think it does help talking about it, even if it's not always
and I will have to, I've got to thank you for that, because I know it can be difficult for people. I know it's difficult for me when I talk about stuff, and it does get a little bit easier each time you talk about it.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But it's still difficult, and being someone who's interviewing someone, you're thankful that they come on the show, and you just don't want to press the wrong button.
Yeah. I'm pretty honest.
Especially if you don't know them personally as well as you may know someone else, that you're all right to talk about certain.
Yeah.
So it's always difficult. I appreciate that, and it's brilliant that you are able to talk, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we may have just saved someone's life. You never know. But we'll move on, because that obviously is in the past, and our feet are constantly moving forwards. We never go backwards. Not even when you're walking backwards, you're still moving forward. So we're never moving backwards, and we never go back to the past. Everything's new. So we move on, and you moved into multi events. And what I'm talking about is obviously triathlons. When was your first triathlon, and how did it feel stepping into a world, not just of running with your buggy with your child, or running with a group of friends, or going for a cycle? You're now stepping into a multi-event, so it's a little bit different, really.
So I've told the story 100 times, but I don't know if you know it, but I was at a running club, New Forest Runners, and I overheard a guy, very fit guy, saying, oh, I'm training for an Ironman and it's killing me. And I remember thinking, whatever that is, I want to do it. And I knew about triathlon, but hell, I wasn't going near it because I couldn't ride a bike and I couldn't swim. So no, thank you. I then found out that Ironman was in fact a triathlon, and not just a triathlon, but a really long triathlon. And at that point I was, I kind of committed, because I'm the sort of person that once I say I'm going to do something, that's it. So at that point I was training for an Ironman. And the first one I did was the Wimbledon half in Exmoor, which was ridiculously hard for a first triathlon. It's incredibly hilly down that way, and it was a real shock. I mean, it took me 3 months to properly sort of get to swimming. I mean, I could swim like breaststroke, but I had to like properly get a couple of lessons, and then basically I used a pool boy, and I spent 3 months just going up and down in my local pool. And once I got to sort of 3 months in, I was able to swim like 30 lengths, and then from then on I built one, so that was good. I then did a familiarization camp at Sherborne, which is where the original Ironman used to be, and then realized that I actually was quite scared of swimming outside. Open water swimming, it was really challenging, and so that kind of opened up a whole thing which I wasn't aware of, having panic attacks in the water and struggling with the cold and such like that, which is something that's followed me and never leaves me, but that's who I am. But that was a bit of a shock. Cycling, I had to borrow a bike from my then father-in-law, which was like had gears on the crossbar, which was oh my god, it normally killed me about 5 times. So it was a real steep learning curve. There was nothing. I mean, running was the only thing. I used to get to the run section and think, oh my god, thank God, I could do this bit.
That was something you already knew about. Something
I could do this bit. Yeah, I can do it slowly, but I can do it. So
it was your comfort zone, really, out of three events, and it was also the last event as well. So you knew.
It used to be like save it to the end. And I was like, oh, I like this bit. This is okay, because the bike I still get terrible back problems. So it was, the longer the bike, the harder it became, and things. So it was like the really hard, horrible, scary bit at the start of the swimming, and then the bike was just pain, and then I'd be like, oh, the run.
And what was that first event like for you exactly? What was going from obviously someone who just ran to now someone who's had to teach themselves, much like Mimi Anderson's had to teach herself to swim.
Yeah.
It's a whole new thing. What was that first dip in the water in an event like?
It was terrifying, and I really had to kind of like just get in and just be like one step at a time. I just wanted to go home initially, and then once I got into the water, I was just swimming like I was being chased by a shark or something, and I looked up and the whole rest of the field was over to the other side. I couldn't even see them initially, and then I realised I'd completely swam the opposite direction. But getting out of the water was just like the most enormous relief ever, and it just continues to be. Actually, that's not really got any better.
I mean, that sounds like you found a pretty much an easy triathlon, and you decided to make it harder by swimming the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Just because you thought that was too easy.
Yes. Why would you want to do
give me a head start
when you can do more?
So now, as I already mentioned, I've been following you now for quite a few years via social media. This is the first time we've actually had a proper face-to-face chat, really. And I've known about your events because a lot of my friends have run them: the Midnight Marathon, the Oneer, your brutal triathlons. What is it about the hard stuff that draws you to create the hard stuff?
I'm the sort of person that when I look at something that I don't think I can do, I want to do it. It's not always a good thing, and sometimes I wish I didn't have it, but it's just how I am. And if I see something that's really hard, I just want to have a go at it. And the same with events. It's like, why would you do something, if simple on the flat, in the warm, even though I'd probably do a lot better at those sort of events. And if I ran those sort of events, I'd probably get more numbers and make more money. But I like, cold, hilly, hard. That's what I like.
Because we are quite lucky in this country. We've got a few event companies like yours, Mug Cruise, Mark Cobain.
Yeah.
All like that element of toughness added. It's not about making people fail. That's not what anyone.
No, not at all.
It's each one of you guys help those that enter try and succeed to the best of their ability. But with the timings of the events when they're on, the actual terrains of the events and the rules and restrictions, they're made to be hard.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that we have these events companies that do that little bit out the box. Nothing major, nothing drama. Well, Mark's a bit
it's nuts
to the edge of the box, but we've got hundreds of normal companies that do
Yeah,
the
yeah.
standard triathlons, do standard half marathons.
That stuff doesn't really interest me, I guess, because I'm not, and I always say this and people say I shouldn't say it, but I'm rubbish at sport. I'm rubbish at running, swimming and everything. Biking, I'm really, really slow, and there's no natural ability, but my strengths are I'm stubborn, strong-willed, I'm determined. Apply that to tough events, and sometimes I can finish them. But with a fast 10K, oh man, I'm just like, people have finished and gone home and had a shower and put their feet up, and I'm just finishing. So I guess there's a part of that as well.
Yeah, I hate events where the first place is already in the pub, having a meal, gone home, and not even on the end of the finish line waiting for you, the last person. I prefer the events where we have the winners still there, clapping.
That would be nice.
The last person across the line. You don't get that in the road events, the 5Ks or the 10Ks. They've been gone, got their check gone.
And it is just about speed. I mean, I've run smaller events like that, and actually I struggled running them because I didn't. With ultra events, you get such a feeling of camaraderie, and everyone supports each other, and the winners they do stick around because it's not just about finishing, it's about supporting everybody, and because you spend a lot of time suffering out on the course and stuff, you make these bonds with people. The same with the crews, actually. I've made a huge amount of new friends through this as well.
I totally agree. I was speaking to Vicky Owens in my last podcast, and we were talking about exactly the same. The major extreme events and the ultras, there's something more to them than just the race. The friendships that you make with the other runners. I've become friends with quite a few of the GB elite runners through them. I'm one of the mid-packer back ends. You don't get that in road races. And
not at all. They wouldn't even look at you.
They wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't even know you.
And it's not dissing road races because there's a place for them. We still do them. We still run them.
Yeah.
And there is a place for them. But like I said to her, something about these events that just makes them a little bit more special, and you come away with long-lasting friendships.
And I've got friends all letters. I mean, that's girls from like the ultra triathlons. 2 of them live in America, one's in Canada. We've got a friendship group, and on Facebook group that we just chat all the time, random stuff that we send each other, and we see each other maybe once a year, once every 2 years. I love that.
But how many people can you say that about a 5K race in your local town?
No.
No, you don't. You might see him again if you raced it the following year.
Yeah. It's more of an experience, isn't it?
Exactly. Anyway, so early on in the season, I talked to your colleague, your Padawan. Maybe it's probably the best way. Your apprentice, James. We talked to him about his Decca Ironman, and you're probably the reason for him.
Yeah.
Really.
I like that.
I agree. It was probably you that sowed those seeds through your events and stuff like that. As many others getting into other things, always have someone they could probably blame really for where they go. For those that don't know, can you explain what a Decca Ironman is?
Okay, so a Decca Ironman is 10 Ironman basically, and you can do it in 2 different formats. So you've got the Decca Day, which is an Ironman a day. So it's a triathlon each day for 10 days. And then you have a continuous format where you do all the swimming. So that's 24-mile swim, and then all the cycling, 1,120 miles on the bike, and then 10 marathons continuously. So that's basically a Decca.
Right. So 10 Ironmans.
Easy.
So we're talking 24 miles, 1,000 of swim, that is. 1,000 odd miles of biking and 260 miles of marathons.
Yeah.
Now, to someone like me, I've heard this before. Obviously, I'm still amazed, regardless. But I can picture that. But to a lot of people, they can't even imagine that. And you probably always get the comment, "Oh, I wouldn't even drive that in my car."
Wouldn't even drive that
far. But even to people like myself and others that have achieved a fair bit in their running career, just a Decca is phenomenal. But you have done more than a Decca. You've done what we call a double Decca in 2019. Can you explain what a double decker is?
Oh, I can't do the maths. So I know.
I've got the maths.
Okay, so it's 20 Ironman. There you go.
20 Ironman distances
And I did
continuously.
the continuous format. I didn't do the one a day format.
So you did 20 swims in a row, 20 bikes in a row, 20 runs in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break this down into the first event, the swim. 48 miles of swimming.
Yeah.
How are you feeling prior to that start? You've done, yes, you did a Decca in before, but it's another one. So you can't say, oh, I've done this before. You've only say I've done half of it before.
We did kind of think we were going to draw from that experience, but it didn't turn out quite that way. We based our timings, me and the girls, we based our timings on our Decca experience, but it didn't turn out that way. It was just horrendous. It was messy.
Yeah, so when obviously putting on your swim cap and your wetsuit,
yeah,
how were you feeling on the start line?
I was apprehensive, but I've got to be honest, the events leading up to that double decker, I was having a few issues personally and in my business life as well, actually. I was a bit stressed out. And so this, for me, was almost like an opportunity to not relax, but to switch off from the real world. I had a month, basically. It was the end of the season. I had some decisions to make about my life in general. I was kind of at that crossroads. So this, for me, was like, oh my goodness, I can just finally stop thinking about that stuff and concentrate on just getting this double decker done. I wasn't physically in the best shape of my life. I really wasn't. And also when I got there, I was really struggling with massive headaches from because it's actually at altitude in Mexico where I did it. So it doesn't appear to be altitude, but it actually is. So I was really struggling with kind of just feeling a bit rubbish. But once I'd started, I was properly, I got my head in the game and I felt really good. And the swim, actually, although it was incredibly tough, I got through the swim really well. Just by not faffing and just getting on with it. So the swim actually was really good. Just long.
Can you remember how long roughly the swim part took you?
No, I started Friday at about, I want to say we started at 6 p.m. and I was finished by Sunday mid-afternoon.
So it took you a weekend?
Yeah.
It took you a weekend. We'll break it down to that. People could probably relate to if I said a weekend. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, well done.
And there was no stopping in that. I mean, I had an hour and a half where it was funny. I was swimming, and I think it must have been Saturday night. And I thought I was falling asleep as I was swimming. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to get out and have a bit of a break. And I'd seen other people doing it. And in my head, we were in a Lido. In my head, I thought there's a room. They're going to this room and it's warm and there's a bed and so I built this whole thing up in my head. I got out and I was like, where's the room to sleep in? They were like, no. There's a lilo on the floor over there. There's a bloke on it at the moment, but you could sleep next to him. Get in your sleeping bag with your wetsuit on and have a sleep outside on the grass. And I was like, okay. So that was like, yeah, that was the only sleeping. That's the only time really I got out. So
I take it wasn't like shallow enough for you to have a stand up every so often.
Sorry, what? A shower?
No, to stand up every so often.
Oh yeah, no, you could. I mean, you could get to the end of the pool. It was a 50-meter one. You get to the end of the pool, and I would literally have all my nutrition on the end, and so I was sort of setting myself certain, swim 20 laps, stop, eat something.
So that must have been even harder than doing like, say, I don't know, a 2-mile lap in a big lake. The fact you were 50 meters.
And I think actually I was very disciplined with the swim. I really wanted to get out of that pool quickly, and I knew that faffing was going to be something that, because there's nobody there to tell you to hurry up, and also the cut-offs were quite generous. But I was like, I'm getting out of this pool quickly as possible. So I didn't mess about. I stopped very rarely, and
Amazing.
I don't know how much time I took off my first Decca time, but it was substantial. And I was like, I mean, overall, I was the second finisher for the swim.
Yeah.
I don't do that stuff, so I was quite pleased with that.
Yeah, no, you take that. You take everything.
I'm taking that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
That's amazing. So you finished your 48-mile swim. Obviously, you take off your wetsuit. What is now going through your head? Because you've obviously now got a 2,240-mile bike ride ahead of you. What's your thought process going through at the moment?
So, I mean, I felt very ill after the swim, as did everybody else, just due to the amount of chemicals that are in the water, and it's not regulated over there. So it definitely was. We all had a lot of problems. We all felt very ill, and we did for the rest of the week, to be honest. We were all coughing and had lots of allergies and sores and, bleeding mouths and stuff. So it was pretty bad. So I was I just felt awful. I knew I had to eat, but I didn't have any appetite. I knew I had to sleep, but I couldn't sleep because I was in so much pain because of the sores on my neck. I couldn't move my head from side to side for about a week on the bike, which made things interesting because there was so much. I was just so torn from the wetsuit and from the chlorine and stuff. So I just remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get on the bike, let alone cycle. So I kind of went back to my tent and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. And so in the end, I just got on the bike just to do a few laps, and that seemed to sort of help. And then I got off and had a bit more of a sleep. And then that was just basically, that was my life for the next 2 weeks, just getting on the bike, getting off the bike.
2 weeks, riding a bike.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal, really, when you think about, it's not like you did like an hour a day either. You were constantly on the bike for 2 weeks.
And it was weird because we thought, when I did my Decca in Switzerland, I had a routine and I liked that routine. I used to ride or run all day until 10 o'clock at night. And then I used to have 4 hours sleep, and then I'd get up and start at 2 o'clock in the morning. And as much as that sounds brutal, that was my routine. And I thought going to Mexico, that's what I would do. And I planned for that, and it just didn't happen. I was exhausted, and you'd ride and then you'd think, oh, I'll do 20 laps, but sometimes you'd be like, I could only do 5, and then you'd be falling asleep. And because also you were going past your tent every 5-mile lap, it was quite easy just to be like, oh, I just nip in and have a quick sleep. So you have to, then it comes down to a massive discipline of just being like, no, you're only stopping when you literally can't go on anymore. Otherwise, you're just going to be here for months.
So I can imagine you finished your bike ride 2 weeks later after your swim.
Yeah.
That took you a weekend. Getting off the bike and you're like walking like John Wayne.
Definitely.
How are you feeling at this point, knowing, okay, I've only got the run to go, but it's not just a run, it's 524 miles. How are you feeling at this point?
I definitely didn't think about it, like that. I mean, I didn't think about the actual how long I had. I think, initially I was super thrilled just to get off the bike and to get onto a point, because the bike was quite difficult in terms of how many people were in the park that we were. So you were not only trying to keep yourself on the bike and going forwards, but you were trying not to hit people, which is another layer of kind of complexity that you didn't need. And then people just walk out in front of you all the time. So to get onto the run section just was like, thank God. Now I know I'm not going to have an accident, because that's what was happening with people. We were having accidents.
You may trip over, but you're not.
I'm happy with that. It's okay. Having a bike accident is a very different.
Less height to fall. Yeah.
Yeah, but people were on the bike. They were having accidents, and it's almost like at the point when you've invested so much time and money into something, and you think, I could fail now because of somebody just stepping out in front of me. You become very paranoid about it.
But at this point, stepping onto the start line of the run, were you feeling confident now because you're in the last stage?
I kind of, not in any way arrogant, thought I can do this. I just have to be, again, disciplined to ensure that I get the laps done and don't be desperate for sleep at this point. 40 minutes just isn't cutting it anymore. You want to sleep for a night. You're so tired, and your whole body is just trying to, and your brain is just trying to get you to sleep for more than 2 hours or whatever you set yourself. So occasionally, we had storms and stuff. And there was, at one point, there was a massive 10K race with 10,000 runners, which made it very difficult. And actually, we were kind of almost forced to have a break. And in a way, it was nice just to think, I can't go anywhere. I've actually got to stay and rest. So it was just about.
You didn't fancy like having a cheeky go at the 10K, see if you could knock a few people.
Strangely enough, no.
it would have annoyed you if you had beaten some of them.
Yeah, I would have beaten some of them.
So you're into the run stage. You've forced obviously to have a little bit of a break for the 10K and stuff. So we'd say an hour roughly. 20 marathons in a row, 524. Right, a lot of people will do that, a marathon a day for 20 days, as an example. You did it pretty much continuously.
Yeah.
Now, what time scale are we talking about here? Is it another week, another 2 weeks, a weekend?
I should try and get the times, and then I can make you understand. I'm trying to think, because the whole thing took me 28 days. So it was so roughly 20 odd days, I think it was. I'm going to have to look for the times. But I'm not very good with that sort of stuff. And all I knew is that I had a cutoff, what that cutoff was, and how close I was getting to it, which is like, that's how I do everything, basically. So, and initially I thought I was going to finish a bit sooner. And that then started to become apparent. And when I got home, I looked on my phone and all I had was these little notes, the notes on your iPhone. There were hundreds of them just with numbers on, where every time I'd stop, I'd go, right, now I need to do 5 here, and this will take me to this number, and this, and it never made any sense. It's like a mad person, completely insane. It was. So all I'd do was plan, and then I would never quite make what I wanted to do because my goals were always just too high. But and then at some point, I think I was about 5 days, 6 days before the end, and I got quite a serious injury. And it was a really painful one as well, and it was just getting worse and worse. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to finish. I can, and I just remember thinking, I've been here for seemingly months, and I'm like so close to finishing. And actually, it scared the life out of me, and it really upset me. And it did for a little while. It was all I thought about. And then gradually, it started feeling a bit better. And then I could think, okay, just keep moving. Even if I was just walking, just walk,
So do you think that injury possibly may have been also a bit more mental, that it wasn't as bad as it actually was?
Yeah, no, it definitely was, because I started getting it. Actually, no, I got it on the Friday, and I remember thinking, I remember having a random thought that it was going to start getting better, and it'd be better. It would feel better by the Tuesday, and weirdly, it was. So in a way, I know what you're saying. There's a lot of mental stuff going on. I mean, it was a very painful injury, and actually, I got it again recently when I tried one of my Warner attempts, and it's quite a serious. It swells up quite nasty. It's from power walking, basically.
Yeah.
Because you never train to power walk, and when you power walk and you've got a deadline, you walk hard and you walk fast, and it's the ligaments on the front of your ankles that take all that strain. You don't train for that. You never do you? So yeah, it was that basically. But I remember my friend said to me, can you move forward still? And I said, yeah. And he was like, we'll just keep doing that. And I thought, okay, we'll bring it right down to just move forward. And that's what I did.
So you finished 48 mile swim, 2,240 mile bike ride, 524 mile run. Mm-hmm. And you were pretty foobarred up by the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to lie, you weren't like fresh as a daisy. You've been going for a month, 28 days. What was it like crossing that finish line? Because a lot of people, when they've crossed the finish line, feel obviously elation. Now, I've finished, a 250 mile run or what have you, and I crossed, and all I think is, thank God it's finished.
Yeah, that's it.
A sense of relief that I didn't have to carry on.
Yeah.
Was that how it felt for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was really, it's such a bizarre thing with ultra triathlon as well, because there's so few people around at that point as well. I mean, it was during the day, which was nice. I think it was a Saturday morning, so the park was quite full, but people don't know what you're doing. And there's not many people left back at HQ anymore. The race is sort of scaled down. So it was just a case of anticlimactic, because it wasn't, it was just like, oh, thank God I don't have to do anything. I mean, I remember doing the last lap and thinking, I'll never see this bit again, and I'll never see the fat squirrels again. I'll never see the, the grumpy guards. And it was like, yeah, okay, this is, but, and it's weird because of my issues with alcohol. They're throwing champagne around at the end. And I was really stressed because I was like, I hate champagne anyway, regardless. Yeah. I was just like, didn't want to do the whole champagne thing, and that was stressing me out. You're just about to finish a double decker and you're worried about people throwing a bottle of champagne over you.
when did you realize, when did it set in that what you've achieved at that point? Was it a day later when you, or a couple of weeks later when you sat in your sofa and you just went, do you know what, I actually I got it didn't ever really sort of not sink in as such. I don't know. I mean, I'm terrible for just moving on and not really sort of thinking about stuff. And I know people sort of say you should be a bit more, appreciate what you've done and enjoy the sort of like recovery time. And I'm forever just crashing on with the next thing. And I
one of my brutal people got, you know, the frames with the medals and all the bits and bobs. The company that I use is Framed, and I looked at this guy who had his done. I thought, oh, I wonder if I could do something like that for the double decker. And actually, I've got it in my lounge now, and they made a cracking job. And I've actually got a tiny bit of the swimming pool tile because it was crumbling and falling apart. And I remember just taking a bit of the tile when I started the swim, thinking, if I finish, I'll do something with this. Yeah. And I stuck it in my bag and never thought about it. And when I got home, I thought, oh. So I've actually got in my lounge, like the medal and the certificate and, you know, my race number. And it makes me remember, it forces me to think.
It's memories. When I'm positive, good memories.
Yeah, when I'm feeling a bit low or a bit like, oh, I'm not very good, I'm a bit rubbish at this, I look at that and think, remember you did that.
Yeah. I mean, I was speaking to Dan Lawson on it, and, you know, he doesn't really see his achievements as like achievements. They're just nice memories.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what yours is now.
Yeah. It's a positive thing.
You've gotten the bad stuff.
Yeah.
The sores and your injury. Yeah. You sit there and you look at it, you think, that's a really, you know, what I've achieved is really, really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really well put, actually, because that is what I don't think, oh my God, I did this. You don't think like that. It is just a good memory. You've kind of, filtered out all the bad stuff. And it was a good time with good friends, and it had a good result, which is positive.
Now, speaking about, obviously, my buddy Dan Lawson, last year he smashed out one of the fastest ever.
How did he do that?
Jog or lid jog, because he went upwards. Yes. Runs ever. And obviously we had the female time as well, not long before that. But as he finished, you were starting. Literally.
Like hours.
I was sat at the computer. Come on, Dad, yeah. And then you were like, I'm off, everyone. I'm off. I was like, oh, Claire's off. But you obviously, yes, you were going downhill. I like to wind you. You were going down. But you were self-supported. And if people, what that means is you didn't have a sport crew.
No.
You had to carry everything basically that you were using all the way down. Obviously you didn't carry everything. You pushed. You had a running jogger pram type thing to carry your stuff, to make obviously life a bit easier than a big pack.
I tried the pack. That didn't work.
So we'll talk about that, because it sort of went under the radar a little bit, because obviously everyone talking about the female record just going. Dan smashing the the overall record and the male record. You sort of crept into the radar and hi.
Don't worry about me.
Theirs was all supported.
Yeah.
They didn't have to worry about planning the route or anything like that. They just ran. Mm-hmm. Oh, don't get me wrong. They
ran fast. It's a hell of a difference.
But they didn't have to have all the other pressures of fixing tires and getting food and you had to do all that with yourself. So why did you want to do that in the first place? Why self-support? A lot of people just do it anyway, you know.
Yeah.
But why did you want to go for the self-supported?
I think, again, it comes down to the fact that I'm not a brilliant runner, and I just thought, I could do it. One, I didn't have anybody to ask to crew. I didn't want to ask anybody either. It's a hell of a job. I couldn't afford that thing either. I could, to get crew and to have a proper camper van and all that, it was going to cost thousands. I didn't have that. And also it just didn't give me that buzz of excitement. I'm sort of erring now to the adventure kind of racing more, looking at cycling across America and that sort of thing. And the wild camping aspect of it really appeals. And I've never done it before. Cooking for myself, just looking after myself. I thought, I wonder if I could do this. And I was trying to do it a little bit faster than what I hoped, but again, it's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters whether you were self-supported or supported. That section through Scotland, is always rubbish.
Always horrible.
Always rubbish.
Yeah.
Everyone I've followed and watched and everything else, when they get to Scotland, it is miserable.
Yeah.
Weather's never
a lot bigger as well than you think. Scotland was a lot smaller, and it turns out I was there for ages.
Don't get me wrong, it is stunning in a lot of
Beautiful.
ways, and I know that, but it's never kind to runners ever.
No,
Ever.
the roads, it's pretty bad.
It's like the running gods go, oh, joggle or the jog isn't hard enough. I'm going to just piss on you while you, whether you've just finishing or just starting. It makes no difference. I'm having you. So let's talk about a bit more. How did it go overall for you?
Overall, it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd go so far as to say it's life-changing in the sense,
You're not the first to say that.
Yeah, out of everything I've done, it was certainly had the biggest impact on my life.
I guess for you, it was also different because normally your multi-day events involve cycling and swimming.
Yeah.
This one was just doing the thing that you loved the most out of all three of them, the running. Keep, by yourself.
Yeah.
No worries about other people, obviously, because you were by yourself. You just had to worry about yourself, and that was it.
Yeah.
So that must have been quite nice not having to have those worries as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there was nobody in front or behind me. I mean, initially I had this unrealistic goal in my head of doing it in, was it 18 days or something?
I think that's the original supported time.
Yeah, and even Jim just laughed. He was just like, "You're not doing that." and my mate Matthew, he was like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself under this pressure? Just have an adventure." Jim said, "Just have an adventure," and I was like, "Yeah, but." And it was kind of initially getting the sponsors on board. It was quite a big thing saying I was going for this.
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't at least give it a go, you would never know.
Yeah. So once I'd sort of gotten rid of that goal of trying to do 52 miles a day, and I then realized that 40 was pretty much my limit, I then was like, okay, I felt so much better, because initially I was like 52, I felt like I'd failed on the second day because I hadn't reached it. It became a bit negative, so I had to really reframe it. And once I reframed it, and we then started looking at different routes as well, because obviously I was struggling with the traffic and the buggy and me, and it became, I'm going to say, the jogger was like a massive roller coaster. There were days, not even days, there were minutes when I was ecstatic, and then minutes when I was crying my eyes out, and it was like that. It was up and down, and it wasn't even like, oh, I'd have a bad day or a good day. It was, I'd have a terrible hour, and then a brilliant 2 hours, and then another terrible hour. So there was a lot.
The emotional roller coaster was pretty strong with you.
Oh yes.
Okay, so let's break it down. What was the best part of it?
The highlight, I always go back to crossing the Forth Bridge in Scotland, because I wasn't expecting it. I'm terrible at geography. And I remember my friend Gavin, who was helping me, saying, "Oh, the Forth Bridge is kind of iconic." And I was like Googling it, going, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, it looks kind of nice." And it just coincided that when I crossed it, everything kind of aligned. It was a clear night. The bridges were all lit up. I was feeling like really good. My feet weren't hurting. I was going to do like a 45-mile day or something. I was meeting some people, Gavin included, on the bridge. And it was just it felt like progress as well. It felt like I was actually moving towards finally getting near to getting out of Scotland. And that was just a really good day, a good night, that was.
And obviously what was the worst part for you of that journey?
I mean, the worst part was the pain in my feet, which was relentless. And I really struggled to manage it sometimes, because painkillers just weren't, it's sort of like a nerve pain, and painkillers weren't touching it. So I was having to find different ways of doing it. And sometimes it would just get too much. And there were a couple of days where I only did like 20 something miles because I was just broken. And emotionally, I was a bit wrecked as well. So that was definitely a bit of a low point. And also the wild camping tour, so I got sort of more into the urban areas further down the country, became more challenging. And where I started loving it in Scotland, by the time I'd sort of got down to Cornwall, I was really kind of had enough.
Yeah. I bet. But would you do it again?
No.
You wouldn't? No?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because of the traffic.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing about it actually really was the people that came out. And everyone who really knows me knows I'm a bit of an introvert. I will choose sort of solitude over big groups of people. But the people, not just brutal people, and not just friends and family and stuff, but just strangers who have now become a few good friends. They just, some days they were just relentless. They would come around a corner and there'd be more, and other days quieter, but still people just came out to support me. And whether they'd give me a couple of biscuits or a coffee, or just clapping, or just saying hi, and take a picture, and say hello to their kids or whatever. It was so amazing, and I got so much from that. I felt like almost like they recharged my batteries. It sounds a bit funny, but somebody would come and talk to me for half an hour and they would leave, and I would feel energized from that. And that was a surprise to me, and it was like amazing. That was really good.
Okay. What's next for you?
What's next? It's tricky because things keep getting cancelled. So it's a bit like, I'm trying not to put too much on things, because Trans Am, which is probably the next thing I'm focused on, may not happen. So that's a triathlon that goes across America, starts in Florida, a 30-mile swim, and then you're cycling all the way across, can't think where basically to Death Valley, and then we run across Death Valley. Apparently it's quite warm.
Apparently, the Badwater 135 race through Death Valley can get
every time
your shoes.
People are like, what? And I'm like, what? It's Cynthia, right? And so the running bit is actually supported, because obviously it's quite dangerous apparently. But the bike is unsupported, which really appeals to me, and that's 3,000-mile bike. But it got cancelled last year, and of course this year, who knows what's going to happen. So again, I'm just trying to focus on small things at the moment, rather than focusing on the big things and then having them sort of taken away is a bit.
I know. I mean, I just had the art cancelled, so
I know. I had that email.
Most of my year was focused on training for that, because obviously races were cancelled, and there was it was a chance that obviously things might have got better by the end of the year. I focused on that, and then we got the email. I was like, oh, brilliant. So
it's hard, isn't it? I got the tunnel one as well from Mark Cobain, but that's been rescheduled for September, and I'm like, oh, it'd be warmer, because the tunnel, oh my God, was it cold when I did it last time.
200 miles in a tunnel.
You can't socially, I knew that was coming, because you can't socially distance in the tunnel, not in that tunnel.
No.
Oh, that tunnel's horrible. I still have thoughts about that tunnel.
The main thing is you're not alone doing it.
No, definitely not.
It's not like
the hallucinations I had in that tunnel were it's crazy.
Absolute bonkers. Right, we'll get into some quick fire questions now. All right, 10 questions, and quick answer as much as possible. Don't worry, it happens. Your first bit, your favorite bit of kit out of all of them.
Oh God,
that's like, do you have a buff that you have to take, to every race?
I guess my brittle buff is that's a really good bit of kit. That's really put me on the spot. Can I come back to that one?
Okay, favorite snack you like to have during the race?
I like mashed potato. Really works for me. I like mashed potato.
Really? That's different. Pineapple on a pizza, yes or no?
No.
Okay. What's your favorite drink? It doesn't have to be alcoholic anymore.
Obviously not. I really love coffee.
Coffee, yeah. Road or trail? Which do you prefer?
Trail.
Okay. Right. Swim. You've already answered this, and I think I know the answer. Swim, bike, or run? Which is your favorite?
Run.
Your favorite place that you've ever run in?
Ooh. Well, I think it'll be Wales, isn't it?
Yeah. Beautiful place.
We'll go for Wales. Yeah.
Is there any bucket list race that you have your eyes on, and maybe in the future?
It's the Arch Talk. I am headed towards that. I am on the list, but again, it's the whole COVID thing. So it's been pushed on another year now, which is okay. But that has just been on my radar since 2009. So if you had said to me, I've got one race that I can do and no other races for the rest of my life, that's the one I'd want to get done.
Well, I hope it lives up to your expectation when you get to
I just want to get it done now. It's been too
long. Have you ever fancied running the whole Southwest Coastal Path in a oneer?
Maybe.
Is that in the pipeline? Have we got an exclusive here, Claire? Brilliant. Well, you get plenty of support when you come down this way.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Marmite, yay or nay?
Yes.
Oh, see,
I love Marmite.
You don't like pizza, pineapple on a pizza, but you like Marmite.
Pineapple on a pizza is disgusting. No, yeah, Marmite's just saying.
Brilliant. Obviously, over the last year, especially throughout the lockdowns, we've had a lot of starters in running and cycling and swimming. Do you have any sort of advice for beginners looking at lacing their trainers for the first time and the big world of scariness out there?
Okay, I mean, only that, don't ever get overwhelmed by looking at the big distance. I've done a lot of really long races, but I still have to break things down always. And still, even now, I went out for a run with my daughter the other day and I hated every minute of it because I was like, my legs are hurting and I just felt rubbish. I was literally just breaking it down, just another 10 minutes, So I think that's what the whole of my life, actually, I use that when things get too hard. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Excellent. If people can follow you on social media, how can they follow you?
Brutal Claire on Instagram. My website, brutalclaire.co.uk.
Brilliant. I'll put the links in the description anyway, so if people can find them. And you have a book coming out, is that right?
I have my joggle book, No Easy Day, and that's on my Brutal. It's a link on my actual website, Brutal Claire. And then I've got my other book coming out, which is kind of just my whole story. It's taken a little while to get to this point. We're just finishing the editing now. And yeah, so that's just my story right from when I started, right up until the double decker. So yeah.
Well, I can imagine why it took a long time to get to that point.
Quite a lot going on.
It's been absolutely brilliant, Claire, catching up with you and talking to you face to face. I mean, even if no one ever listened to my podcast, luckily they do. I enjoy it, and I think it's nice just to chat with fellow bonkers, weird, mad people, whatever people label us as for doing what we do, and just getting to know people and what
makes
clicks.
Yeah,
and majority of us do have background stories to why we are
demons.
And as we said earlier, if what we've talked about helps one person, then it's always a positive thing. But thank you for giving up your time. It's been much appreciated. What I'll do is I'll have a little chat afterwards after I've pressed record. But for the podcast, thank you very much, Claire. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on.
Cheers.
So that was the legend that is Claire Smith. What a fantastic and inspiring woman. Even though she may not believe she's amazing, I generally believe she is. She's inspired so many runners to push their limits within the running and within the Ironman world. Their events are fantastic. So yeah, that was just amazing. And if we have helped one person listening to this going through some mental health and addiction issues, it's only a positive thing. And I'm grateful for her for chatting about it. So if you obviously liked what you heard, please do subscribe. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and all that sort of stuff, please. Subscribe on YouTube if you watch it, like it, and share. Please share my podcast, because some of these may help a few people. So thank you to all those that support me. Until next time on If My Feet Could Talk. I am the Ultra Running Maplo, and I'll see you next time.